Now, what was the last topic that I covered yesterday? We were studying DBWA. That much is beyond.
I think we have completed cross-site request forgery.
Cross-site request CSRF. Okay. So we'll continue after that now. I think I'd also started with the cross-site scripting. Okay, so let's continue with this now. Okay, so after CSRF, I think we started with this cross-site scripting, or had we not started yet? No. Okay. So see, with cross-site scripting, what you're trying to do is trying to insert your custom scripts, your malicious code into any input fields that you see, and you in order to run that code. Now, cross-site scripting is of three types: reflected, stored, and DOM based. With reflected cross-site scripting, what happens is whatever your script is, your malicious code, that gets reflected off of the server, and your script runs in the victim's browser. So with reflected cross-site scripting, this is only going to work if you send someone this a link with the modified script in it. So let's see what cross-site scripting can do for us. First, let's see the intended functionality here. What's your name? If I say Bob, it's just going to say hello, Bob. Let's try injecting some HTML code into it. Okay, yeah, I remember we discussed this that you can do this with HTML as well, but since JavaScript controls the behavior, more malicious things can be done with JavaScript. HTML will just change a couple of
So
things about.
I
Yeah,
think we have done the reflected part, sir. Reflected
reflected
side.
we have done. Okay. Even for medium and high level, I don't think that we've covered. Okay, let's do that. So go back to here. Now, if I write that these same kind of scripts here, it's not going to work. The cross-site scripting is not going to work. It's simply going to take that as the input, and it's going to say hello. It's just going to say hello and this. So let's try different payloads. There is one known as body on load is equal to, so as soon as the HTML page body loads, this function will run. So it's running. Now, even though the script tags don't work, this will work. There are other kinds of payloads as well, like the image source one that I showed you yesterday. Image source is equal to, okay, so this is the one for getting the cookie. So this is working, and actually even the script tags will work. Let me show you. So if I write script alert one script, this will work. So this is not, the script tags themselves, they are not, what do you call them, case sensitive. And why it's working? Because if you take a look at the source code, you will understand that what they are doing is, if you find this, if you find a script tag, that is just getting removed. It's getting replaced with a empty string. Now what's happening is, when I'm writing this, okay, if I'm writing this instead of a normal script tag, this is not getting filtered because they only specified the filter for script when it's all in lowercase. So for uppercase, it's not going to work. This filtering is not going to work if I write script in uppercase, or if I write it in kind of a mixed case kind of thing, like if I write, although this is not very easy on the eyes, but So this works as well. Now let's go one level higher. Hello. XSX, sorry, XXS, XSS. Scan it. Now let's try the same thing. See if it works or not. So will this work? Will this not work? Let's see. Okay, in this case, it's not working. Let's try something else. Let's try the other kind of payloads. Image source is equal to X on load is on error is equal to alert document dot copy. This is working. Now there are a variety of different payloads available for cross-site scripting. So if one kind is not working, you can always try others. And even if you go to GitHub, you'll find a long list of cross-site scripting payloads. So for example, this is good list. One that I'm sharing in chat. And similarly, you'll find me way more if you keep searching. So in this case, what they've done is they've applied a replacement script regardless of case. If the latest the word script are there, then it will get removed. But we've seen that the script tag is not the only way of injecting cross-site scripted code. So there are other ways as well. So this is cross-site scripting reflected cross-site scripting. Now let's come to stored cross-site scripting. Okay, let me change this security level to low first, and come back here. Now this is a form, kind of a form. It tells us to enter our name. Let's say Rob. Message, hello. Sign guestbook. So what happens is this entry gets saved into this guestbook, and whenever you visit this page, even if you log in and log out, log out and log in again, and then you access it. So this is there because this has been stored in the database. Now, if I specify a cross-site scripting payload, that will get stored in the database. And since this page retrieves those entries from the database, so whenever this page is opened by anyone who accesses the website, that cross-site scripting code will, that JavaScript code, that script will run on their system. So stored cross-site scripting attacks are much more critical, much more dangerous than reflected attacks, because stored attacks can persist for a long time. And okay, let's take it, look at it. So it's asking us for a name. Let me try to insert a script here. Script alert. Okay, it's not letting me type anymore because the thing is they have a limitation on the length of what you can insert here. So for the name, let's keep it as Rob itself. Message, let's try to insert our script in the message part. Sign this book. Okay, so it worked. We were able to insert our script into this message section, and whenever someone accesses this page, let's say I'm browsing the website, I come across this page, so that script will run in my browser and it will remain in the database. So everyone who loads this page, if I even try to load this page from externally from outside my system, let's say I access it from my host system, so even there this code is running. Just check that. So this is going to run every time since it is stored in the database. This page is taking information from that database and showing it here. So that's why this stored cross-site scripting is more dangerous because it persists for a long time. And there is another name for this kind of cross-site scripting known as persistent cross-site scripting. Reflected is known as non-persistent. Stored is also known as persistent cross-site scripting. So those are also different names for these same kind of attacks. Now we come to the medium level, go back to stored, and let's try the same thing again. Message, let's try to insert the script. Let's try a different payload this time, see whether that works. Sign guest hook. This is the one okay, that we're getting from the Rob one, but the one that we're currently entering, that does not work. Let's try a different payload. Message would be that body on load thing. So it's not working. Our cross-site scripting code is not working in this case. So there's probably a lot of message sanitization applied to this. That's why it's not working. So you see they're sanitizing the message input and they're checking for any kind of strings and stuff, and they're removing, they find it. Now the only other option is the name field, but it's not letting us enter a lot of characters. It's not going to let me enter any more than this. So what do you think we should do in this case? Okay, what we can do is, see, if I look at the source code, if I inspect element here, so here I'll see that for this input field, this max length has been set to 10. So if I just remove it on my end, removed it. Now if I try entering, sign guest book now. So now it's working. So you may come across a lot of different situations where something may be, something will be restricted, but you can bypass it by making some simple changes on your end. It's clearing guestbook, so I don't have to deal with those alerts again and again. Now let's try the same thing. In max length, I'm just going to remove. Let's try script alert 10. Okay, now it's allowing us to insert the script. Message, no message. And so it's not working in this case. So maybe they've done some filtering, they've applied sanitization to this name field as well. But let's try other payloads. Maybe that would work. So let's try that. Okay, this is again set to 10. So we are able to make that work. So the more payloads that you try, the more your chance of getting successful with this kind of attack. The more chances you have of getting successful with this. So this was stored cross-site scripting. And is it clear to you guys the difference between reflected and stored?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. Good. So now let's go back. Just change it to low and move on to the third kind of cross-site scripting, which is called DOM-based cross-site scripting. Now DOM means
So this is a document object model. Is DOM meaning?
yes,
Okay.
So in this case, DOM is document object model, and when we talk about this DOM-based cross-site scripting attacks, these kind of attacks basically work by manipulating the objects within the DOM itself. So DOM is it's basically kind of structure, you could say, or hierarchy for all the elements within your web page. When your web page is loaded into the browser, when you open a website, then it gets converted into a document object rather. Now JavaScript has the power to manipulate any of these, change any of these objects. I'm talking about JavaScript here currently, not scripting, cross-site scripting, just JavaScript, and that is, that is intended functionality that it changes these elements, it makes changes to them. Okay, there was a diagram for this as well, sort of for the hierarchy. Let me look for it. So this is the diagram. Basically, it says that the document is at the top of the hierarchy, and everything else within the page belongs to that. So your no, after the document, the next is root element HTML. It contains the head and the body. The head contains things like the title. The title contains the text of the title. Body contains different tags like anchor tags, headers. The headers again have their own text. Anchor tags has its own text. So similarly, for all the elements within your page, this is the sort of hierarchy that is followed. So you could say that the document object is the root node of all the HTML elements. So with this object model, JavaScript has the power to create dynamic HTML basically. So it can change the HTML elements, their attributes. It can add elements, remove elements, and of course, all this will be done based on behavioral changes within the page, or when the user reacts to something on the page, user interacts with the page, hovers over something, clicks a button, enters some information, so things like that. Now, DOM-based cross-site scripting vulnerabilities usually happen when JavaScript takes data from an input field, on, usually the URL in case of DOM-based cross-site scripting, and it passes it to a JavaScript function which supports code execution, dynamic code execution. So this is again different from the previous cross-site scripting attacks, and okay, let's check it out in the browser. So in DVWM. So now first let's see the normal functionality for what is happening. So it's telling us to select a language, and there is a list. We have 4 languages. If we select German, what happens? Select. It's not actually going to change it. It's just for show. So when I select German, it changes to default is equal to German. So now in the URL, we have a parameter which we can try to modify, because there are no other input fields here. That's not something we can use. We'll have to work with this parameter. So let's try inserting a script here. Script alert. Press enter. Then okay, we are able to run our cross-site scripting. And what is happening is, based on this URL, we are able to manipulate the DOM. Our script in the URL is manipulating this objects within the DOM. In our case, particularly this input field, which is the selection itself. So that is being manipulated here. Now let's come to next security level for this. Let's go back. Language doesn't matter. French, English, whatever you select. Default is equal to French. Now let's try changing it here. Will I be able to use a script in this case? No. So they have added some sort of filtering. So you cannot use a script. So what is happening is when we select this value, okay, actually let me try it once again. There is one thing that I did not mention. So if you try to run that, the server sees that the value is, it has a script and stuff, so it changes it back to English. If I write image source is equal to x, if I try to run this, even this is not actually, okay, yeah, we can't, okay, insert images anyway here. Let's try this. Okay, that's not going to work. So nothing is working currently, but okay, let's try doing something else. So currently the server is filtering out all of this, but with a DOM based cross-site scripting, we don't really want to reflect this code off of the server. We just want it to run within the browser. So I can add this Octathor here. Now I can try writing script. Let's see what happens in this case. So in this case, our cross-site scripting is now working. Can anyone tell me the reason why this worked? In this case, does anyone know about this? No. So what happens is this is okay, an Octathor, and or simply the sign you use for hash. Now whenever you insert anything in the URL after this, that is not processed by the server. The server simply ignores anything that comes after this. So the server is going to ignore this. Sorry, this. I refresh it. Now the server is going to simply ignore everything that comes after it. But JavaScript is not going to ignore it. I mean, this is still part of the URL. So using this thing, we are able to manipulate the DOM now again. Because we don't want the server, we don't care whether the server interacts or not, but we just want our script to run. So let's see again the next level. So again, this is working, and we are able to perform DOM-based cross-site scripting. Most DOM-based accesses is done through the URL, like we did. So any questions here about cross-site scripting?
No, sir.
So this is our cross-site scripting part completed. Now let's take a look at weak session IDs. I'll be needing Burp Suite for this. Now weak session IDs. So whenever you connect to a website, whenever you are working on a website, when you're logged in order to keep track of your session, in order to keep track of what user is currently logged in within this particular session, it has the server generates a session ID and stores it within your browser in the form of a cookie, so that every request that your browser then sends has that cookie which contains the session ID, so that the server knows that okay, you know, which user this is and you know what they are currently doing. Otherwise, HTTP requests are independent of each other. There would be no way of knowing otherwise how they would, you know, like which user is logged in or how to respond to this particular request without any form of session management. Intercept on, and actually no, I can run intercept off here. Don't need to intercept, just need to use burp. Now let's see the session ID generation algorithm. So I think that is enough. I come to the HTTP history part. Okay, these are the requests that were captured, and the cookie, you know, you can see the value of DVWA session. So we have 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43 after 40,000. Just a moment. Now you can see all of these cookies, all of these new session IDs that are being generated are simply sequential. They are simply incremental. This is not a very secure way of doing this. There is a tool in Burp called Sequencer, which can help you analyze the randomness of a particular value, in this case session IDs. So I sent the request and it has already figured out the token location. So this is what we want to test: DVWA session cookie, start live capture. So it will send a lot of requests, capture those, and then it will analyze it. It has done it. Analyze now. We'll run some tests. Now we know this is sequential, so the overall result, it says the quality of randomness within the sample is extremely poor. Okay, very poor quality of randomness. Session IDs should be randomly generated. The algorithm should ensure enough randomness so that an attacker cannot predict session IDs. Okay, so if he has two consecutive session IDs, he should not be able to predict the next one. Otherwise, he can simply use that information to insert that predicted session ID into his cookie and log in as someone else. That would be known as session hijacking. Okay, let's move on to the next security level, see what we get for this one. Low, medium, subnet, weak session IDs, verb, proxy, HTTP history, right click, clear history, yes, and back to the browser. Now let's try generating for the medium level. Come back to that. So this time the cookies are okay, this looks like a long value. Okay, whether they are random or not, let's see. Again, it says that the randomness is extremely poor. Why? Because while at the first glance this might look like a good, you know, session ID generation algorithm, but if you take a closer look, this is simply the time in seconds. Okay, and I can show you this in the source code as well. Simply taking the time in seconds and generating a cookie out of that. So even that is not strong enough. That is not a good enough algorithm for this kind of thing. Because with the session ID generation algorithm, you want it to be robust enough so as to generate IDs with enough randomness in order to be unpredictable. So any questions?
So these cookies or these session IDs,
Yes.
these must have some time frame or expiry time.
Yes, they do have expiry time.
So within that window, if an attacker is able to guess the session ID or cookies parameter, then he will be able to hijack the session. Otherwise, it is not possible then.
Yeah, that's is. Or yeah, actually what you're saying, that is correct. That if it is guessable within that much time, then he'll be able to hijack the session. But the thing is, very few websites pay attention to this expiry part. There are some websites whose cookies, they expire within half an hour, like um, bank websites. Okay, It's very important for bank websites to have very short cookie life, so that once you log into a session, use it for a while. If you're inactive, and you will get logged out soon enough.
So that's why we have system in the bank. They have very frequent law, means like active time. So once you will be idle for 5 minutes, it will throw you out from the session.
That is a good thing. That is very much required for banks. Even in my bank's website, the bank that I use, the same thing. Login. If you are inactive for a while, it will log you out. The session time is very small there. But there are some websites which never log you out, like Facebook, Twitter. These websites never log you out. So such situations make the website more user friendly, but then you are compromising a little bit on the security, the overall security. So again, there's a lot of things to be kept in mind while creating a website, and this is one of them. But you must also keep in mind to not make the session time too short, otherwise users will be annoyed. I mean, of course, that also depends on what kind of website it is: social media, banking, ticketing website. What it is, it also makes a difference with regards to your decision here.
So will this TLS handshake, will this have some impact on the security of cookies on sessions?
TLS handshake. Are you talking especially about specifically about the handshake itself, or about the presence of HTTPS over HTTP?
It's a modification of SSL over.
Yeah, I know. See, SSL is no longer used anywhere. TLS has been
TLS is
adopted
not use
everywhere.
a standard now.
Yeah, TLS is a standard. SSL had a
Because
lot of
yeah,
vulnerabilities
because
actually.
this session handling is done in the session layer
Hmm.
basically, and this TLS is just basically handles the security part in the transport layer itself.
Yes.
So it is just it is providing the required means like security in the layer below. So automatically the layer above is taken care.
See, transport layer security, or TLS, that ensures that your transmissions, whatever data you're sending back and forth between client and server, that is secured. So no one except the client and the server should be able to see the details of that communication. That is what your TLS ensures. And also SSL also did the same thing. It's just that it had a lot of vulnerabilities there. So it got outdated. It got
The
got abandoned
heartbleed,
now.
I think, heartbleed vulnerability once came, like
Yeah,
in the case of SSL2.
that was very critical. That was a very
Yeah.
critical vulnerability. Heartbleed. There was Poodle. There was a Freak. There were quite a few. Poodle was also very serious. And now SSL is totally abandoned, because no, if you are using SSL, I don't think anyone does use SSL at this point. But if your systems, your servers are, then that is a huge issue for anyone who might be using that. So TLS is widely adopted, has been around for a while now. And what I was saying is, yeah, TLS does not have any direct impact on your session handling. Like it, you know, whether you are using TLS or not, will only it will only be, what's the correct word? Relevant. Yeah, it will only be relevant in case your cookies have that HTTP only. No, not yet. HTTP only, the secure flag enabled only. In that case, unless you have set, unless you are using TLS, unless you are using HTTPS, you will get an error. So cookies have different flags as well. So one is HTTP only, that prevents JavaScript from manipulating the cookies or even interacting with them. Another is secure. Secure means you uh, have to have TLS compulsory, HTTPS is compulsory in that case. So that's the only kind of impact that you could say that it makes here. Otherwise, it would not be related.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So anything else?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay, then we'll continue with this tomorrow.